Hello, everyone, and welcome to Coffee with Innovate Finance, our podcast series where we speak to industry leaders on financial innovation and fintech. Our podcasts are available on Spotify, Apple Music, and Google Podcasts. I'm Veronica Glab, Head of Engagement at Innovate Finance, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Tony Petrov, Chief Legal Officer at Sumsub. Tony, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Likewise. So, Tony, tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up as CLO of Sumsub.
My professional background is mostly related to public international law and human rights originally. And that's what I practiced for, let's say, 10, 15 years. And then I joined this startup at relatively early stage when they were just starting. And it was because I started to realize that this, let's say, RegTech wave of innovation was something very, very promising, and I should be part of it. And actually, I was absolutely right. And I see many of my colleagues actually who were also doing, for example, human rights or public international law, other related areas, investment law, for example, something like that. And they actually started migrating into something related to innovations, personal data protection, and regulations related to RegTech technologies, et cetera, et cetera. So I was kind of like one of the first penguins in my tribe. Others actually started also going in the same direction.
All right. Well, you're really setting the scene for us to geek out a little bit today about the RegTech space. So
Yeah.
can you tell us a little more about Sumsub? How did the company come about, and what is your vision and mission?
Yeah, Sumsub was founded by brothers from Israel, my friends. They started actually doing mostly anti-fraud technologies and mostly related to tampering of images, like things like Photoshop, etc., how to detect traces of such tampering. So that's where they started, and then at a certain moment they started thinking about KYC and how to do KYC with these technologies, and they just kind of like some of those who actually created this industry for a couple of years in, let's say, 2017, 2018, when the main focus of KYC technologies at that time was exactly anti-Photoshop, how to detect tampering of documents on large scales of incoming profiles. When, for example, you have an ICO or you have a very early stage crypto exchange or something like that, you have huge amount of customers every day, and some of them are fraudsters, and you need to find them. So that's how we started, and then we just started going with the market and with the regulations. And we saw how the regulations, were changing, and we started adding additional products, such as, for example, proof of address and verification of legal entities. And then quite recently, we started doing the financial monitoring and transaction monitoring. So the whole idea is, when you read the anti-money laundering law, you have kind of like a bunch of procedures there that the financial entity should carry out. And so we just went by this law and started just adding more and more services that would help our clients implement this law. So that was very easy to a certain extent, an idea. And currently, I would say we cover all of the procedures that are featured in most anti-money laundering regulations.
Who are your customers at Sumsub?
Usually they are electronic financial institutions. So it can be both fiat and crypto. So those who are not traditional banks usually. Some of the traditional banks actually also use our technologies, but in a, let's say, other segment. For example, exactly some of the technologies related to anti-fraud, etc. So it's something that they are not very good at. But our typical clients are the emergent financial companies that are trying to replace the banks and be the next generation of financial services.
Well, speaking of the banks, why don't we dive a little bit into the current state of fintech? How,
Yeah.
in your opinion, have the recent bailouts of banks affected the landscape of the fintech industry?
In several ways. I mean, in terms of the financial side, I think the impact was not very serious because the market it's just it's just like throwing a stone into the sea. Like it will not really damage the sea, but I think there are several things. First of all, the reputation of those banks that are dealing with crypto that had nothing to do with this crash. Absolutely, like these banks crashed not because of crypto, but the reputation of the banks that were friendly to crypto can be diminished right now, and can be endangered. And this is bad for the crypto world because I mean, it's very important for both sides to have good bridges of communication, and those banks were one of these bridges. So this means that crypto companies will need to find some other ways how to access fiat money, especially in such markets as the US market. But on the other hand, I see that some of the large traditional banks, like those from the Wall Street, such as, for example, JP Morgan, they are showing some interest in crypto area, and it seems that they will just replace them by themselves, these empty spots, and so we will see just new players in the market that will play this role eventually, if again these spaces become empty at certain moment. So otherwise, I can just tell that as FTX crash and this bailouts, they just show an extremely problematic area of risk management in large banks and large financial institutions, that we see that they are not able sometimes to reallocate assets in the right direction, and that's why they crash. Basically, the same happened with FTX. Really, I mean, they stole some money, but the other side of the problem was that they had problems generally with risk management and risk allocation when they invest in certain assets, and they should basically count the risk level of different assets that they invest in, and they obviously did not do a great job there. And so this is, of course, something that is really puzzling, because we start thinking that even in large banks, there are problems with risk management, let alone some other less important elements of this huge global financial system.
Well, and diving into specific areas of regulation, what value would you say that the travel rule requirement brings, and why would that be needed?
Travel rule is basically Swift for crypto. We can call it this way. So the idea is to track the information about the user from one part of the transaction into another, so that it would be like an endless chain of information, like the exchange of information. So it's extremely important. We are right now working on a protocol for travel rule. I just don't see how otherwise you can effectively control the exchange of crypto. We see that right now crypto is widely used for money laundering in particular. But still, the problem with travel rule and limits of travel rule will be unhosted wallets. So those wallets that will not be with certain like the exchanges, for example, they will be still anonymous. And this parts of this type of transactions, when you have huge huge amounts of transactions, let's say on Ethereum, without any involvement of any exchange, will still be anonymous and still be not covered by travel rule. This is a problem, and the solution to this problem at the moment is not really found.
And what about the monitoring of transactions in the AML or CTF systems for the fintech industry? Can you tell us a little bit about what those acronyms mean and how monitoring those transactions will change in the future?
Yeah, there is an idea of suspicious transaction, what is called suspicious transaction. The idea of suspicious transaction is basically that the aim of this transaction is not is not as declared. So it's declared that it's like a transaction from one person to another person, but really it's a transaction in order to launder some money. And there are many types of suspicious transactions. They are all typified, and you can find many materials about that. The whole idea of transaction monitoring solutions is to transpose this into, let's say, the work of a robot, so that it will not be someone sitting at the table and looking at this transaction, but like a robot that will just analyze this in accordance with the rules that you have put inside from the outset. And so that's how we also have a transaction monitoring solution on our side, and many others exist. Of course, this is not a big problem right now. They are also, let's say, equipped with AI, with artificial intelligence to make it more efficient. Right now, it's an absolutely indispensable part of anti-money laundering procedures, and any financial institution has them. And the only thing is just how to enrich the algorithms of transaction monitoring with more and more triggers, and that's the tricky part. So how to do it? We, for example, we try to make our system an ecosystem where, let's say, the triggers that we, let's say, catch on the side of the client onboarding will also work at the side of transaction monitoring, so that if someone has some, let's say, address at this specific location, and this address is not the same address as the person, let's say, uses for some specific transaction, this can be a risk trigger, just as an example.
So you actually touched on something really interesting with AI. I mean, I think it's no secret that AI is taking a larger role in the crypto and DeFi space. But what about the legal restrictions on the use of AI that are being promoted on the government level and also just widely being discussed? What's your take on that?
Oh yeah, that's a very interesting point. We see right now many legislative initiatives in this regard, both in the EU Artificial Intelligence Act, which is not yet enforced but will be enforced very soon, and in the US we have some initiatives by the White House, and I think some of the states already passed certain laws, and there are certain precedents already in the courts. So the whole idea is to make this, let's say, there would be like kind of like a fair use of artificial intelligence, so that we would not, let's say, wake up at a certain moment in the digital gulag or something like that, when we see like everything is operated by artificial intelligence, and you cannot really overrule the decisions taken by this artificial intelligence, because it doesn't take any appeals or anything like that. So that's the whole idea, to avoid the Chinese path in artificial intelligence, to ban the use of artificial intelligence in some, let's say, what is called unethical ways. For example, let's say face recognition in public places, for example. Practical side, now moving to the practical side, I think it will be working just as GDPR is now working. So this means that you will need You will need most of the companies that use artificial intelligence, they will need to appoint the whole vertical of let's say, officers that would monitor ethical use of artificial intelligence, and create procedures and policies for the ethical use of artificial intelligence in the corporations, and to a certain extent, let's say, put a leash on the development side, on the side of the developers, so that they would not go too far in their creativity in terms of artificial intelligence.
Fair enough. So no digital gulags here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you had a crystal ball, what prediction would you make for the next, say, 3 to 5 years for the identity verification, anti-fraud, and compliance space, and how that's going to shake up the fintech industry?
So right now there are two main trends in identity verification. One is more and more big data sources in specific countries. This means that some large countries, they just provide access to their own, let's say, governmental data for identity verification solutions. So this means that instead of just collecting a passport from the person, you just access the data source, and you ask the person just to provide a specific element of the data so that you can verify. That's one thing. And another thing is self-sovereign solutions. When the person would control their own identity and provide credentials by his or her own, instead of, let's say, having a big brother watching you. That's a very good idea, but the problem is with regulations, because in regulations still we have know your customer. This means that you have to provide information to a financial institution more than you would like to provide. So that's why self-sovereign solutions, they could probably work only in case of alcohol shops or access to bars or something like that, but not to financial institutions. What I wanted also to say is, I think that maybe in 5 to 10 years, we will be, if the world will be very quick, we will get into the world without passports.
Really?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I start thinking about this quite recently. I think that passports, it seems that with all these new innovations, we will come into the situation when this specific paper-based passport will be not really very much used. We see right now some of the borders already use biometrics instead of using the real passport. So it can be very easy right now, even with this state of technologies, to to identify the person based just on his face. And this means that the need of the paper-based passport is not very much so important. So I think that we are on the threshold of this new world where there will be no passports. But I don't think that the, let's say, the scopes of rights and privileges that people with different passports have will somehow change.
That's actually really interesting. I mean, I have to say, I'm not sure how I feel about paperless passports. I get scared enough walking into an Amazon Fresh shop, but there's something to be said for being able to walk through a gate as a frequent traveler. Now, I do want to come back to you a little bit and talk about your journey as a CLO, especially in the current climate and coming out of COVID-19. Can you share your experience alongside any challenges that you faced in your journey or any lessons that you've learned along the way?
About COVID-19 specifically, I would say that COVID-19 was a huge boost for identity verification. I think this was the year when we grew the most huge tempos that not comparable with any other time. So and this is not only about us. This is about delivery services and Amazon type of the marketplaces, etc., etc. Of course, this was a huge leap, huge leap for many technologies that really happened, and this also made the governments of many countries finally take this step and say that non-face-to-face identification is identical to real identification, like to real face-to-face interview with the agent of your company. This was a huge leap. That's why I say that we are very close to the world without passports, because we are very close. We couldn't think that we are so close to non-face-to-face identity verification anywhere, but that's the world where we are right now. We are in this brave new world already. So the impact was huge. And what was the second part of your question? Sorry.
Well, are there any lessons that you've learned along the way that you would like to pass on to the audience?
That's a very good question, but I think that right now any let's say technology-based solutions for social innovation, I think right now is a huge priority. Like what we see right now in the world is that the technology actually leads the innovation in many sectors of our life, and this includes even like our social structures, our, let's say, culture, etc., etc. So, and we see right now online cinemas, right, that you can use more frequently than the real ones. So I think that if you have any ideas related to how to make life of the person better with the technologies, I think most of these projects will be successful. So just, I mean, if you have anything in mind how to innovate the life, that's the time to do it. That's probably my advice.
Fair enough. And actually, I kind of have to add in a cheeky question here. You've made some great references to Gulag's Big Brother and Brave New
Yeah.
World. And just one final question from me. Is there any exciting news from Sumsub that you would like to share with us, or anything that we should be on the lookout for?
We just released the transaction monitoring solution, which is tied up to our KYC and KYB parts. So if you are a financial company and you are thinking about something that would really make you happy in terms of your KYC and AML procedures, and make you sure that this will work together, so that it's not like separate solution for KYC, separate solution for KYB, separate solution for transaction monitoring, that then you have to employ some of your technicians to tie them up somehow so that they would work. So if you want to have everything in one box, then we are the best solution for you. Just think about it. And if you are that type of a company, just contact us.
All right, that sounds great. And that is all for this episode. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Please keep an eye out for upcoming episodes. All of our previous episodes are available on our website, so please take a look at our catalog for many more insights on fintech and financial innovation. And thanks once again to our guest today, Tony Petrov, Chief Legal Officer at Sumsub. And thank you all at home for listening. Join us next time for Coffee with Innovate Finance. Bye for now.